And we're live right now with Ghost Stories with Cara. Hi, Cara.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Brandy.
Hi, Brandi.
Hello.
Okay, Cara, tell everybody what we're all about, what we're doing.
Well, we're going to have a fun ghost stories episode tonight. We're going to have some folklore. We're going to have some urban legends. We're going to have some haunted mansions. And probably one of the most haunted mansions in all of New England we're going to talk about tonight. But why don't we start with our wonderful books and let everybody know that they are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Actually, you can go to any bookstore, and they will pull up by author name our books, and you can order them. And of course, I also have The Shadows of Satan, which Jason and I are in the process. I shouldn't say going to be. We're in the process of turning it into a manuscript for a movie. And I'm so excited that I'm going to see my vision on the big screen.
It's
That's going to be
fantastic.
that's going to be
Oh,
wonderful.
so exciting.
It is. And Jason's going to be joining us a little while later. So we are going to start with some uh creepy hauntings in some mansions in the United States, especially one that is in New England, Massachusetts to be exact. How many of you have heard of the S.K. Pierce House?
Well, we already know I have.
Yeah.
Not me. I haven't.
Well, Sylvester Knowlton Pierce was a chair manufacturer. That's how he made his money. He made a ton of money manufacturing different kinds of chairs. And he decided to build this huge mansion in Massachusetts. It was 6,661 square feet with 10 bedrooms and two and a half bathrooms, 3 stories. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the original Adams Family, the outside of it. Um, but I don't know if it's the fact that the square footage has the 666 in it, or if it's the ground that it was built on. But tragedy started with the house. Now, this house was decked out with like state of the art features. It had gas lighting in every room. It had a big, massive furnace, and it had running water throughout the entire house. It was like this modern, um, it was like this modern marvel of its time, and people envied it. And he didn't care how much it cost him. He didn't spare a dime when he built this. He made this place just immaculate. I mean, the woodworking, everything. Um, but he didn't enjoy the house for very long. Uh, 2 weeks after moving in, his wife Susan died from, get this, a flesh eating infection. And that wasn't the first of his family members to die. Now, he lasted 13 years in the home before he passed away in 1888. And then the house was given to his second wife in his will. But she died there too. And then the mansion went to his 3 sons, and they spent years in court fighting over the ownership of this house and who would live in it, and the furniture, and the building, the business that they had, because he's left it all to them after his wife. And his two of his sons finally were like, forget it. And they just moved away. But his youngest son was like so happy that he got this house and got the business, and he thought it was going to make him happy and things. And unfortunately, tragedy struck again. His 2-year-old daughter died in the home again, get this, of a bacterial infection. And after the Great Depression, like, just took the whole family fortune, um, he and his wife converted it into a boarding house so they could make ends meet because that's how bad it was. And about 30 years later, it was falling apart. And he was basically forced to give it away to a friend. He transferred the ownership because he could not handle the upkeep of the home anymore. And the guy who bought it had uh, a gardener who lived on the property, and that was when it was still a boarding house. Well, in 1963, he burned to death at the age of 49 in the main bedroom after his mattress, just for no reason, his mattress mysteriously caught fire. And people have had similar experiences, have had experiences in that main bedroom. There's something about that main bedroom. Now, mind you, that's where his wife died as well, the original wife. And that's where he died. That's where his second wife died. And then this gardener.
Refresh my memory, Cara. Was the main bedroom also known as the red bedroom?
Yes. Yes. It's also the one where they have taken pictures and have seen images like of a face on the ceiling and near windows. Yes. And there's also that's the one that they also people will be in that room and they will catch a whiff of something burning. Yes, they will catch a whiff of something burning. It's there and then it instantly goes away. But a lot of people say that the spirits that are usually there are members of the Pierce family. They kind of make their presence known within the house. And then there's also stories that people have said that they've seen like a little girl that they think is Rachel playing in some of the rooms on the third floor, which is probably where she probably, would have been, staying, probably with the nannies and stuff like that. But they're not the only spirits that are lingering in this house. Not at all. The gardener that died there is said to be roaming through there. That might be the burning smell that with the apparition in that main bedroom too. And then there were two people that used to own the house. I don't want to say their names, but let's just say Ed and Lil in the early 2000s. People saw when they lived in the house, neighbors would go by and they would literally see a boy with like yellow hair running back and forth between the windows. And the people did too. And this couple did not have children at all. No children at all, but yet there was a little child running back and forth, and it was a boy, so that leads you to believe who was that? And Ed and Lil, they had a lot of encounters with entities in this house. Shadow figures in the basement. And a dark-haired woman with a creepy smile. And they believe that the woman with the dark hair and the creepy smile actually tried to like possess the owner. And I mean, this is some scary stuff, especially the shadow figures, the attempted possessions. The house also has a dark and menacing look to it, especially at night. But the owners that owned it up until 2015, they only lived in the house for 2 years at Enlil. They only lived in the house for 2 years. They got out and they were trying to sell it for the longest time because of all the terrifying things that happened. They had investigation groups come, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters. They told their story on My Ghost Story. And they had a couple of other paranormal groups that are not on TV, but they're paranormal groups, come and investigate this house. And it's very scary. And then there's another spirit that also kind of lingers there that they've actually kind of communicated with. Maddie Cornwall was a young nanny who took care of the Pierce children, and it's believed that that's the only place that she really ever felt comfortable. And it's believed that she was such a good person that maybe her spirit acts as like a protector of the house, trying to keep all the dark spirits or the dark entities in, keep them in line, I guess. And now the current owners bought this house in 2015 sight unseen, because if they were only asking like $325,000 for this mansion in Massachusetts, if you can imagine. That tells you how haunted it is, because most mansions like that size with 10 bedrooms and 3 stories and and the architecture and stuff would have gone for millions. And they decided that they are actually renovating the house, and they're going to do historical tours and overnight stays, and people are lining up to do it because they want to stay, especially in the rooms where the ghosts have been felt and the presence has been felt.
There's
But
nothing like a bunch of shadow people in the basement.
And I have a couple of interesting facts about that mansion too. If you're just let me know when you're done.
yes, no, absolutely, go ahead. I'm going to
All right.
actually mute myself and grab the baby at the same time. So go
All right.
ahead. And
First, I'm going to say hi to Carlos because he's saying hi to everybody. Hi, Carlos. Welcome to our show tonight. So the Pierce Mansion has a couple of things that's known about it or has been reported about it. So it was actually reported to have hosted people such as, our former president, Calvin Coolidge, Minnesota Facts, Bette Davis even, P.T. Barnum, and Norman Rockwell. And the Freemasons also used it for a meeting place quite frequently. So I found that very interesting. The other thing that I didn't, maybe Cara mentioned it and I just missed it, but there was also a reported murder in that house. And it was a prostitute who was reportedly murdered, strangled in the Red Room. So, and like I said, she might have mentioned it and I just didn't hear her mention it. But that's a couple of cool little facts I know about that little mansion.
I think it's so cool. Yeah, it's huge. But the fact is that I would think that'd be people clamoring to, buy it at that price, because a lot of people want to live in a haunted house.
Yep.
And go ahead.
Pierce, like she had mentioned that it had the 3 6s in the size, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's interesting is that Pierce died 13 years after living there. Yeah, that lovely little number 13 that everybody wants to tag something notorious on it. So it's kind of ironic that he died after 13 years. So
it's kind of sad because you want to spend some time with your in your house, in your nice big house and everything.
Especially when you put that much money and effort into it. I mean,
Yeah.
It wasn't just a throw together little cottage. That took a lot of time, planning, and money. And just to enjoy it for, technically you didn't enjoy it for 13 years because you lost your wife right off the bat almost.
Yeah, I completely forgot about mentioning the the prostitute. That was, this house was not just a boarding or rooming house. It wasn't just a mansion for a wealthy family. This building was actually at one time also used as a Masonic lodge for the Freemasons,
Hmm.
and has had many, many different facets in it. But yes, the I believe maybe the prostitute may be the angry dark woman with the creepy eyes.
That's what I'm wondering as well.
Yeah, I'm
So,
wondering.
well, this woman, what do they just see her here or there, or in that one
Well,
room,
that's the
or
one that tried to possess the
oh,
prior owners that lived it. They owned it from 2009 to 2015. They only lived in the house for around 2 years. They moved out because of what they were feeling,
hmm,
and so um, that's the one. That's the Lil, the prior owner, who this creepy dark figure tried to possess. So I'm wondering if that was the prostitute. I mean, she died such a violent death being strangled by one of her clients.
hmm,
And I don't know. I tried to look up to see if there was any, you know, notice of the person being uh, caught, brought to justice, or if it was because it was a prostitute, they just left it.
It's not. There's not a lot of information about it out there, and I think it is
Yeah.
because back then she was considered a notable,
Yeah.
because she was a prostitute, so of ill repute, and they
Yeah.
didn't really get reported on the way that others would have.
That
It's
that is
sad.
that is true. And this house has had so many things that have gone on within the house, that leads you to believe, is it residual? Is it, you know some kind of negative energy? Is it something to do with the fact that he died 13 years after completing the house? Does it have something to do with the fact that the 666 in the size of the house? How did he come up with that number?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
well, a lot of times, and I don't know back then. A lot of times, it's always the county or whatever that's assigning numbers. But to me, it seems like it's accumulated energy. So we've got dark energy, dark things happen, and it builds up until you have things. I'm going to call them creatures that are strong enough to go ahead and start really raising a ruckus there. The shadow people in the basement, I'm going to bet money that that's not where they stay all the time. And the other things, the crimes, the fear, the being scared in there, and all of that, that's all going to be fear and just really kind of build up that negative energy in there. And that has power. And it can also get big enough to be sentient and start doing stuff on purpose. The one thing that gets me about the possession, this is really scary that something could go ahead and do that and take somebody over. To this day, we have the people that tell us that they've been attached or they have been possessed. I actually was witness somebody get possessed, and I remember clearly that she wasn't speaking or anything. She was staring like in a trance. She had red eyes, people, red glowing eyes. And I was like, I'll never forget this too, and I was young. I'll never forget that. And so what can it make those people do or say when it gets inside of them. So there was a lot of energy there, and that was really dark.
Yeah, like I said, it's this house. I've always had a kind of a fascination, just because, you know, it's hard to imagine that someone could build an empire with just chairs.
Right.
It's just kind of crazy, but uh there's just something, I don't know, with the square. Something about the square footage just has always stuck out to me.
Well, and an interesting
Uh,
thing about the square footage is a lot of sites don't report the actual square footage. They just say near to 7,000.
Yeah.
It's like they try to avoid saying that 666.
oh yeah, that's always. Now I don't know when people actually start started thinking, about that, but it got to be a big thing. People being branded, the mark of the beast, what all that kind of stuff. But you know how it morphed into being the barcodes that are on, your grocery products and stuff. So there was always a lot of superstition, and somebody might have wanted it to be that way, and so you don't know why. But when you're accumulating this stuff, all these famous people, all these kinds of people, and the turnover of that building, and the tragedy in the building, and especially those deaths of what was it, the mother and the daughter, and all of that, and let's tack on the 666. We're just building this reputation, the superstition, and the real dark energy.
So
It's just building it up.
Yeah. Well, it's mother
I
and granddaughter, so yeah, but the same
Yeah.
affection too.
and I have
You
an
know what?
interesting fact about that 666. It
Okay.
became known as the mark of the beast in the 1430s, basically,
Mm.
but it is also mentioned in the Bible.
Yes, it
So,
is.
yep,
The Bible is translated.
chapter 13 of the book of Revelations of the New Testament.
Yeah. And,
So,
I'm going to just say the Bible's subject to it being translated. And so whatever they also said, a barcode was the mark of the beast, and that we were going to be wearing them tattooed on our forehead. So
not yet.
there's a
I have a lot of
lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
tattoos, but not that
Not
one
yet.
yet.
But the fact is, I do feel like that's accumulated stuff happening there, and it's just going to continue. It needs to be cleared out, but it's not going to be marketable anymore unless it's haunted, because there's going to be ghost tours and they have to get things on camera and orbs and all that. So the people aren't going to clear that out. But it's a remarkable, incredible building that has this really great, history. And we all love a haunted house. We love the stories.
Yeah. Now I will say I do have another haunted mansion um from Indiana this time. And it's a 37 square foot, 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath home. And it was up for sale a couple years ago. Um, but it was built in the 1800s, and it was a doctor who owned it, and he had his practice downstairs. And over the years of him having his practice there were patients who died in that first floor where he had his office, and not just adults but children. And then the doctor himself, he died in, like, in the back of the house was the master bedroom. His office was up front, and then of course the master bedroom was in the back, with the kitchen and stuff. And he actually died in his own home of pneumonia on the first floor. And there were people who have, I mean, television shows have picked this up, and different publications, different paranormal groups all over the world have come to this house to investigate it. And there are numerous reports of children being seen running through this house, and the smell of baby powder in one of the front rooms. And children sing, they cry, they mess with doorknobs, they jiggle and jangle them. They pop those doors open. Um, People who sleep in the original master bedroom have felt the doctor say something to them or wake them up to the sounds of his own coughing and wheezing. I couldn't imagine being in this house, but this house is also called, by the way, which is ironic, it's called the Whispers Estate.
I was just about to ask you if that was the one you was referring to.
Yeah, that's the Whispers Estate. It's crazy because they've had different things that have happened. Like, people have gone there multiple times, and they always have a different feeling. And sometimes they don't feel anything at all, and sometimes they feel like just so much energy. And then there's the times where it's like, am I feeling something? I can't really tell. um but there's been people who have been skeptical, who have actually gone to this house and have actually said or seen something and then had a look of like pasty white shock on their own face. And then someone will ask, what happened? And then they're just like stammering, did you see that? Because they're not sure if what they saw was real, because they are people who are like more skeptical. But the owner said that, he wants people to be, uh, he wants them to be respectful, because he doesn't want them to be, um, he does not want them to be Atlas. Sorry, my grandson is just a hot mess. He doesn't want them to cause the spirits to be angered or anything, because right now the spirits seem mellow, but that's kind of, I mean, Brandi, you know about this house. I mean, this house is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous, but it has a lot of paranormal stories behind it, theories. Like, it's believed there's a portal / vortex there.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's always possible, where especially if you tell me there's activity and then there isn't, then you're going, well, they can go back through a portal and then they can come back into the house when they want.
And there's, reported graves there as well that has, like, reportedly it is full of amputated limbs and that kind of stuff, not actual whole bodies. If there's any truth behind that, I'm not 100% for sure, but it has been reported several times.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, it's just, if you think about this doctor, I mean, he probably had a career. I didn't really look up to see how long his career was. I know that he died as an old man, so I'm sure his practice was at least 20 or 30 years there. And the different illnesses that went around at the time, how many children, were brought there. And I cannot remember, I think this is the correct one, where the little girl, where her appendix ruptured, he was trying to do surgery in that front room, and she died from like sepsis. I want to say that that's one of the ones, because there are so many spirits of children lurking about there.
Yeah, I know there was that 10-year-old girl that they had adopted that passed away on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
she had accidentally lit a fire in the front parlor.
Oh, yeah.
And then I do know there was mention of a 10-month-old baby that had also passed away there, but I don't remember if they ever mentioned the cause or if it's ever been mentioned. But several people have died there just because of what his practice was. I mean, you can't save them all. So
I'll tell you what unnerves me is the way the staircase is.
Yeah, that is kind of unnerving.
It's like it's just so, it's not really narrow, but it's got these banisters on each side as you go up, like the walls are like closing in on you. And as you go up the stairs and you're on that second floor landing and you look, it's like these banisters are the hallway. It's just very creepy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if you're already expecting a paranormal experience, that just gives you that more susceptible feeling of it. It's like you see those stairs and you start walking up those stairs, and if you're expecting something, you're more likely going to feel it in those stairs just because it gives you that vibe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad that there's skeptics about, because if we go back to the Pierce house, one thing I would have added is that if there's a pond nearby and the grandmother and the child swam in it, that could have been easily, that's how you get that bacterial infections or the flesh eating thing. Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Was there a body of water nearby?
Yeah. So as far as whispers go, it sounds like it's paranormal activity from the grief and the passing of people that pass over to the other side, or maybe didn't transition and they're still around. As far as the children playing, to me that can be residual, because you hear or maybe you see, Now, if you see a ball rolling and they're playing, that's a spirit. You see just the people and they are not paying attention to you, that is residual energy. And you can see them not as just wispy, you could see them solid. My family has a history of seeing the solid people in color, and they're gone. They passed over and died a long time ago. And my sister saw her best friend, and my other sister saw a child that she did not know in her house. So she went asking around, and the child had perished in a fire. And the room that she saw her in had been rebuilt after the fire. So she said, solid as anything, solid as anything. She didn't know, she thought it was her child because it looked like a living person there.
Yeah. That's crazy. Now, before I tell another haunted mansion story, I know Brandy's got a little urban legend story that's actually based in reality, and it would be lovely to hear that. And because me and urban legends, those are my jam.
Yeah. This one has fascinated me ever since I first heard it, and that's been a few years ago though when I first heard it. But anyway, so picture this: you're cruising around in your car one night, and maybe you're on a date with your girl slash boyfriend, and just hanging out with some friends. Maybe when you spot something peculiar in the distance, kind of looks like a man, but there's something very off about him. For one thing, he's green. His skin seems to glow in the dark, and his face is so deformed that you would not even technically recognize it as a human's face. Would you think he's a ghost, a boogeyman? Any of those?
I'd say a demon, except for the green
Yeah.
part.
I
Yeah.
would, yeah. Green always reminds me of aliens, so I
I know. An
Funny enough,
alien demon.
this is a real person. He was a factory worker who fell, and he was hit by lightning, and it literally melted his face off.
Oh.
So, but he worked for the power company and was zapped while climbing a utility pole, basically. The other story is that it might have been while he was still a child and was climbing a tree. It bounces back and forth between the two stories. But this gentleman did exist, and he was known as the Green Man of Pennsylvania, or Charlie No Face.
Oh.
And
Why was he green?
that is another thing. Nobody has ever actually given a proven conclusion as to why he appeared green. Nobody knows. There's several theories out there. It could be fungus. A lot of people thought that he got hit by something radioactive. That was not the case. The most likely thing that I can find that I would believe is that he probably had a lot of infections in those sores, and they got, lack of a better term, pussy. So
Gangrene.
yeah, so it probably gave off a weird color and stuff.
Well, was it green, or could it have been like teal? Because I know there is a mineral that people used to they used to ingest. They thought it was some kind of healing thing, but it actually caused you to become like bluish green,
Yeah,
like that.
I know what one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And no, they report it as being green. No
Oh,
other color
wow.
besides green. So
Hmm.
it's up for debate.
I'd believe it if they said it was orange and he ate carrots because that happened to a friend of mine. And I
Yeah,
was like, she quit because it scared her, but she ended up being orange.
yeah, nope. It was reported as green, and the legend behind it goes that if you stay out too late, you'll run across the Green Man who will steal your face to place over the gaping hole where his was. That is the urban
Oh,
legend behind it. He roams the hollow
that's
late at
sad.
night and chases the Parkers and the loafers away.
Well,
However,
go ahead.
it was in early August of 1919, an 8-year-old named Ray Robinson was walking with his sister and a few friends in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, when they noticed a bird's nest perched atop of a tree to an abandoned trolley trestle. Now, wanting to get a closer look, Ray climbed it to find out if it was a bird's nest. And this is the story that most people, from what researchers have found out, believe to be the truth. Okay. He accidentally touched that wire that once powered the trolley, and that is what actually electrocuted him.
Oh.
It wasn't lightning. It wasn't falling into a vat of acid. It wasn't any of those other theories. This is what they believe it happened. They traced it back to and what really happened. Even almost a year earlier, before that, another boy had done the same thing, but he died. He didn't make it.
Oh,
Ray
goodness.
made it. Now, how he got the name Charlie No Face, I don't know because his name is Ray.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That's
So
weird.
he was severely electrocuted, and not only did he lose all of his facial features and stuff, he's also legally blind now because the eyes were gone too. But he also
Oh,
it maimed his arm or his arms, burnt off some of his fingers and stuff. So it was a horrendous accident for this kid to live through, and he lived through it. But back in that day and period, since he was so different now, his family kind of secluded him in their house and hid him away as a little boy. And that's kind of
yeah.
even sadder if you think about it. But, anyways, he eventually got older and started to wander at night to get out of the house. He wanted open space, and he'd go out, blind and all, and walk the roads. And that's when people started to notice him. Funny enough, the stories of people who actually came across him, there really is nothing negative they have to say about him. They would talk to him about baseball stories, and they would drink beer with him, and give him rides and that kind of stuff. It wasn't like he was really out there terrorizing or haunting people or being mean to them. Sadly for him, though, there was cases where people were mean to him.
Yeah.
They would take advantage of the fact that he is blind, and they would dump him off in places that he had no idea where he was because he's blind. He can't find his way home, but he somehow managed to every time. Might take a
Well,
few days.
historically, throughout time, people have really, ridiculed, have made fun of, made stories up about people that were different, deformed, or had disabilities. And to me, it sounds like that just was, an urban legend that somebody started, unfortunately, about him. But we also know that there's legends that some of it has some truth to it. And so that's a shame about that. And thank goodness we're in a different time now where they don't, put them in the attic, so to speak,
Yeah.
or they don't throw eggs at the witches or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, the Elephant Man, they named him the Elephant Man. He had the same disease as Rocky from oh, what was it? Oh God, Cher was in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they made all kinds of scary tales about him in the 1800s when he was. And gosh, he couldn't even be buried in peace. I mean, Michael Jackson bought his bones.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No,
No.
How in the world can you do that?
because they took his, they didn't, instead of burying this man and leaving him in peace, they studied his skeleton and his bones, and then they auctioned him off.
Yeah. And he he was one of the ones that he didn't want that to happen. He specifically requested not to have his body put up for people to just stare at and study. And yet they went against his last wishes and did it anyways. It was sad. And I think the movie he was talking about was Mask.
Mask, that's it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, how sad. How sad. But then again, let's go back to all the sideshow things. And I remember us going to carnivals, and I'm the old person here, and they had sideshows of all kinds of things that I'm not going to repeat that I saw in jars. And so you just, thank goodness they have some kind of laws now. But I know that it wasn't that long ago that they had a mummy, a real person that was in a sideshow. Yeah. So, scary stuff.
They have, I mean, if you go back to cinema, one of the first talkie horror films was the movie Freaks.
Oh yes.
And it was all about sideshow freaks, and it actually was cast with
But with them,
people who had these deformities and had these different
yeah,
congenital defects and things.
like
And
I think Pinhead was in it, and
yes,
there was the Bird Girl, and
yeah,
yeah,
yes, and
that one gentleman who was born with no arms, legs, or anything, but he could still roll a cigarette on his own.
oh yes, 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 he did it in the movie.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, they were. I mean, at least they made money. They didn't make that much money. It's not like they got paid like Hollywood stars, but you know, they had to do what they had to do to make ends meet. And joining a freak show was about the only job you could get because no one was going to let you serve their coffee or make their food or work in a grocery store or, you know, a bank or anything because they were what they called hideous.
yeah.
And that's where some of those laws came in too, not just with I don't know if you've ever heard of the ugly laws.
I haven't.
Oh, California was one of the worst. Yeah,
Mm.
after World War II, when a lot of soldiers were coming back deformed after being injured in service, a lot of towns in different states put these ugly laws. You could not walk down the street ugly.
Ah, that's, when was this? What year? What years
It
were we?
started, well, some of these are still on the books, but
Oh wow.
it started in 1946, 1947 after the war. and
Mm.
and then that also kept the what they called, quote unquote, I'm air quoting, freaks, like the people with congenital defects like the Elephant Man and different people, kept them from walking the streets, or people who were burned or injured in a fire, it kept them from.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But I will say that a lot of these people that were, I'm using air quotes as well, freaks in these shows. If you read a lot of their autobiographies, they'll tell you that in those shows they found their true family, their true home. They didn't mind so much being on display because it was their way to be self sufficient.
Right.
And like I said, they found their little knit, their little family. They protected each other. They wasn't outsiders among each other.
It just, when I hear these stories, it just boggles my mind, especially like when I always tell the story at Pioneer Park where they thought it was okay to just bulldoze all the tombstones and leave the people buried there and make it to a picnic area and a park and a playground next to a school.
Yeah.
So to me, that is always like, I don't, and this wasn't that long ago. And so I go, I don't know why these people ever got into any office and got to ever even vote on anything, because it's just crazy, the law, those kinds of laws, and continually treating people this way. And but I agree. I think that there was a lot of people that, I think the Wizard of Oz probably is one good thing to talk about.
uh,
Where hi, Kara, you're back.
yes, my grandson decided to unplug the Ethernet cable from there, and lost me completely. I was like, what is going on? And then I look and he's twirling it around like a jump rope.
Ah,
That's good.
gotta love
That's good.
grandbabies.
Yeah, well,
Oh.
my son he better be back soon. I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, that's okay. We don't mind. You guys, we are at our homes and our offices, and we are, real people. So that's what part of this is.
Real people with
And
grandbabies and dogs.
and you guys
Yes.
loving the horror. And I am not a horror fan. I probably shouldn't say that. I'm a ghost fan. And so the paranormal is my thing, more than I just don't watch the movies. And Jason Bradford, who hopefully can make it tonight, he actually is a part of this film, Kara.
Yes, yes, he is. And I love the fact that he is part of the film, and he has such a unique perspective when it comes to writing the screenplay for my book, that I just love it. I mean, he's just expanding it, and I can't wait for you guys to vote on the ending. Um, and hopefully he gets here soon because he's the one who has the fact or fiction.
Oh yeah, we
So
want to do
he's
that.
his fact or fiction is fantastic. Um, but I do have, if you guys want to hear it, I do have one last ghost story. Um, that is another haunted house, and it's all the way it goes. We're going to take ourselves to Michigan, and it's the Bruce Mansion. Is the name of it, and it was built in 1880. Well, actually, I think it was 1876. It was built in the town of Brown City, Indiana. Now, here's the weird thing: Brown City, Indiana, in 1881 nearly was almost completely destroyed by a fire. But this mansion, which was in the heart of the fire zone, mysteriously survived. And then the house lingered a little bit, but in the early 1900s, a woman named Cynthia Smith purchased the mansion, and she actually um, died in this house. And around the time that she died, the house started being used to host like local funerals. Even though it was a house, it was being, hosting local funerals. And about the 1920s, a man named John Walker and his wife, they bought and they moved into the mansion. And his wife left him, get this, in 1925, but he was found dead inside that home less than a year later. And there is no official cause on his death certificate. Who knows if it was murder, if it was suicide? But there's legends that surround it that say he hanged himself from the highest tower in this mansion.
There's a few other couple, I guess, theories about him as well.
Yeah.
That led to his hanging or supposed hanging himself.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hosting the funerals. Can you imagine?
I know
mean,
it's become a hotspot for paranormal activity throughout the decades, and it's back to being a private residence now. I mean, it was never officially a funeral home. They just hosted, which is weird. They just hosted funerals.
Hey, everybody got a funeral. Bring the ham, and we'll see you at 5. I mean, no.
There you go. Yeah, I know it's crazy. But and some of the weird things that go on in this house, which we're going to get back to Brandi talking about some of the speculation around his death. But there's growls that are reported from the basement, and they've actually human apparitions and eerie voices, like just disemboweled voices, and stuff have been detected on in various rooms by people who have gone through the house. And they say that that the mansion is quiet now, but the current owners, they don't allow tours anymore or investigations, and they actually stay there. I mean, I don't know what kind of experiences, or maybe they've blessed the house, maybe they've had someone come in and like release the spirits. I don't know. It's very strange. And John Walker's death, I mean, there's
I got to
nothing.
tell you right now. I got to tell you. The growling, any growling is not a spirit. It's not a spirit that you can get rid of. That is not a spirit. Don't mess with the growls, because we're getting into the demons there.
Yeah, and that's coming from the basement. Now, Brandi, do you want to talk about some of the the different speculations surrounding his death? I mean, my speculation was that his wife left less than a year before. What if she killed him?
Well, that is one of the theories. The other theory is that he killed his wife and, out of guilt, hung himself. Another theory is that he was involved in a hit and run. He hit a pedestrian, killed it, and being scared and guilty, he took the body home and buried it in his basement and then hung himself. Now, these are all just theories. There is no proof behind any of these theories, but they are some of the theories that are out there.
Well, see, the thing that bothers me about his death certificate and the cause of death is, they kept records. I mean, we've hi Jason, we've
Hi,
seen
can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you. We've seen the death certificates for like Bonnie and Clyde and things from the early 30s. So that they have a cause of death listed, whether it's accident, whether it's suicide, whether it says asphyxiation. If he hung himself, why is there nothing listed on his death certificate at all?
It's a very good question.
But you know what? We will go back to this in a moment. We have got to hear Jason's awesome fact or fiction. Jason, are you ready to tell your fact or fiction? And we're so happy you were able to
I'm
make it.
ready. Oh, yeah, me too. Thanks for inviting me back.
Oh, of
So,
course.
today's fact or fiction starts possibly in the 1920s. There was a family of three, obviously husband, wife, and their little girl, who lived in a mansion in the woods of Connecticut. And one night, while the family was asleep, somebody broke into their house with a hatchet, meat cleaver, and killed all of them. And a few years later, the house was demolished. Now, in the late 1960s, a better part of a half a century later, there was three girls in the woods. Two of them were sisters, aged 14 and 8, and then the older sister's best friend was with them. Now, they're playing in a part of the woods that they have played in before. They were very familiar with this area. And one day when they're there on this day in particular, they saw this mansion that they had never been there before. It's like a ghost house. So, being kids with a curiosity, they decided to go into this mansion. When they walked up to the door, they noticed the windows were broken. There were holes in the porch. It was very, very disheveled and, you know, peeling paint, all the haunted house tropes. Anyway, the two older girls managed to get the front door open, and they had gone inside the house to explore. And the 8-year-old girl followed reluctantly. And when they went in the mansion, they were in a foyer. And once they were all three in there, the door slammed shut, and it was very dark. And it took them a moment for their eyes to adjust to the darkness. And right away, this house had a feeling of sadness, and it was very, very heavy in the air. This feeling of dread. And the two older girls decided to go upstairs. There was a staircase within sight, and reluctantly, again, this 8-year-old little girl, the younger sister of the 14-year-old, went upstairs with them, and she was behind them. And when they reached the top of the stairs, they started to hear noises from the first floor that they were just on. And so they came to the conclusion somebody was in the house after all. And they heard whispering and all these other sounds. So terrified, they fled the second floor. The two older girls ran past the 8-year-old, really nice, right? And left her upstairs, and they ran out the door. And when the 8-year-old girl finally caught up, ran down the stairs and approached the front door to run outside, the door slammed shut and locking her in the house. Now, the other two were outside yelling for her and, trying to get the door open, but it wouldn't open. It was stuck. It was jammed. So the little girl as she's pulling on the door, she starts to hear this noise coming from behind her. It's the sound of people walking on this old creaky floors of this mansion. So she turns around and she sees this family that was murdered in the 1920s. The dad had wounds to his head, and he was bloody, and they were all covered in blood. And they were walking toward her slowly, and the little girl was dragging on the ground a doll. And the little girl, the 8-year-old, turns back around, and just as this family is about to get her, the door swings open. The older sister grabs the 8-year-old by the arm and yanks her back out of the house. And the three girls take off into the woods, never obviously to return to the house again or even speak about it, but that was the night that the ghost would not have a new family member added to their family of ghouls. And that is my story.
Ooh, that was a good one.
Thank
That
you.
is a really good story. So
Yes.
I there are parts of it that just remind me of something real. I have to say I'm gonna go with true tonight because I just something about that story just rings that you know if not it's just it's an awesome
Well,
story.
I will say I heard you guys' podcast a little bit earlier while I was at work today, and yeah, I heard you guys talking about haunted mansions. So I was happy to be able to bring a story that tied into your theme.
And I did do a story from Michigan. So
Nice,
yes, I did a haunted mansion from Michigan as one of that was the story we were talking about when you came on.
nice. I love. There's a lot of haunted places in Michigan. There's a lighthouse in our upper peninsula that's in one of the 50 most haunted places in Michigan, and there's a hospital named Eloise that I'm walking distance from, and that is also listed as a haunted place in Michigan. Jack Osborne was here. He filmed one of his episodes of his new reality um,
Oh,
show there. And do you know Elijah Dushku, the actress from Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Oh
True
yeah.
Lies, Bring It On? She filmed a movie actually called Eloise on location, so it was really kind of thrilling to have them literally in my neighborhood.
Well, I
wow.
was I was thinking of the next time that you're available for a podcast, I would love to do because Michigan, believe it or not, guys, the state of Michigan is the number 4 most haunted state in the United States.
Mm, I believe it.
And yes, it is. And it's only surpassed by Texas, ugh, Ohio, and California. And so Michigan is right up there in the top
Nice,
4.
My mom always had
nice.
childhood
Well, I wonder
stories.
how.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it has anything. I was wondering if it had anything to do with the Great Lakes surrounding. There's probably so many more deaths attributed in a romanticized way with the ships on the water and sinkings. We have a lot of history with our Great Lakes claiming ships, so it makes it,
Yeah.
more of a
Well,
hunting kind of.
well, yeah, your state also shares Lake Michigan with my state.
Hmm.
And Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, believe it or not, are the 2 most haunted of the Great Lakes.
As many ships have went
I
down, I
believe
am
it.
not surprised.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep, I believe it.
If I can say something, so my family's big family, 1,000 of us over there in Michigan, but they had the stories. My mom said that there were bounties for fingers and body parts and stuff.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, and they lived in Pentwater. Right there is the water. And there were lots of stories about the ships and haunted things. And so that was always fun. I mean, I was good with it, looking around for the fingers and the ring. The finger with that had a ring on it. That was one of the
Yeah.
found. So always tragedy and big stories there. And so I
Hmm.
think that's really neat. I love hearing Michigan. They need to have a book on that. Some books of
I
Michigan
think
There are a
ghost
bunch.
I'll have
stories.
to look and see. I believe I may have gotten one year for Christmas from my aunt. It sounds very familiar. I have to look in my library and
Yeah,
find
I've
it.
seen. Yeah, I've got a book on the go. I've actually, I'll have to find it. There is a book. I think it's called "The Ghosts of the Great Lakes," and it
Mm,
talks about
yeah.
hauntings around all 5 of the Great Lakes. Which, Jason, you probably know how you remember the names of the Great Lakes, right?
Holmes. Yes.
Holmes, yes.
Yes,
Anyone
Holmes.
who's from the Midwest knows that Holmes.
Knows Holmes.
God, I
Yes.
remember learning that in school.
Yes.
Yep. So do I.
Yeah, but I definitely, Jason, please let me know when you're available. I would love to do a whole show just on either the hauntings of the Great Lakes or Michigan, the state itself. There's
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let me do some reading and some more research so I can do a better conversation flow with you, and I would love to do that.
yeah, And guys, we need to know, do you think that the story was fact or fiction?
I'm going with fiction tonight.
I'm going with fact because when you said the 1960s, I go, whoa. And also
Mm.
my husband back from in New Jersey, they discovered these kids a mansion that had been abandoned with everything in it, and yes, they broke in, and so he has these
Yeah.
stories too. So I go, okay, I'm on board with that story.
Okay, so
When,
Jason, tell us.
yeah. Oh, I'm revealing it now. Okay. That
Yeah.
story was, let me pause for anticipation. That is fact.
Oh,
That is fact.
yay!
Now, and also a little interesting twist on this is the little girl, the 8-year-old, was Linda Blair, the actress Linda Blair. She experienced this as that 8-year-old.
Wow.
Oh,
I love it. And
wow.
Ja got
Yes.
it right. Yay, Ja. Love it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
told you something just hit me with the story, and I'm like, I feel like it's fact. It's probably something in the back of my
Yeah.
brain going,
Linda
oh,
has.
Linda Blair.
Yeah. Yeah. Linda Blair, the
That was a
beloved
great.
Reagan McNeil.
Was this something that she's talked a lot about?
She has actually about a decade ago. She was talking about it on Celebrity Ghost Stories, and it stuck with me
Really?
for all this time. Of all the stories, all the episodes, hers was the only one that stuck with me. There was probably because I grew up in the woods, and for her to say that she was in a familiar area, and then one day there was just this mansion, and when they went inside, they had gone upstairs. Everything that I described is how Linda Blair had put it had happened, and obviously they never
Wow.
spoke of it again. Yeah.
Were
Until
those
she went on record with it.
were one of the girls, she was the younger sister of one of the girls, was that her older sister?
Yeah, she was with her older sister and her older sister's friend.
Okay. That is
Yep.
crazy. That is
Yeah.
absolutely. I love it. I love that
I
story. That
I
is
love the
awesome.
fact that it wasn't a shape or a shadow from her peripheral that was gone when she turned. It was she described it that she turned around and saw them in full frontal coming at her with great detail of the bloody bodies and the little girl with the doll, and I think that may
Wow.
have been why it stuck with me, because usually when you see an apparition or spirit, it's a quick flash or it's in a peripheral, and you don't really see that detail that lingers that long in present time. So that's probably why it stuck out to me as something special.
That is
I
fantastic.
I love celebrity ghost stories.
I do
And
too.
Regis Philbin was from here, so I grew up watching him on the news and all that stuff.
Hmm.
But he was on it, and he stayed the night in the Whaley house and
Hmm.
told what he saw. And so I was like, "Oh yeah, this is great." So
Every time I
always
hear a
fun.
celebrity staying the night in a house, I always think, did they sleep? Or were they like exploring, or were they huddled in the
Yeah.
corner somewhere cowering? Because that's probably what I would
Oh no, 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 no. No, I know. I have a ghost hunter friend, and he goes to sleep. Oh, there was an orb. He goes to sleep, and then what happened was he films the room. And I said,
do.
no, when I go out there, you drinking the caffeine, you're up. This is what you're here
Yeah,
for.
right,
No sleeping, no sleeping, and no being scared. You're there to catch them and see what they're doing.
right, exactly.
Wow.
Awesome.
Well,
There
we
you
have
go,
to.
Kara.
I know we definitely have to have Jason back. I know that his schedule got a little wanky at the last minute, and oh,
This week, yes.
yeah, but if you're available next week, would love to do Michigan.
Well,
And
I know that next week is my normal week to work, so I possibly the weekend after that I should be back
oh,
in my normal rotation.
that sounds wonderful. And
Oh,
here is
excellent.
the book that Jason and I are turning into a manuscript for a movie, The Shadows
Mm-hmm.
of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my dream and my goal, and Jason is making it a reality.
Exciting characters, exciting storyline.
Oh, it is, and you just my character, the one I love the most, I think, out of aside from Katie, is Genevieve.
Yeah, yeah, I like the character of Genevieve a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we are past time, but I am so.
Sorry.
Oh no, you are fine. I am so happy that you made it. I was like, oh, please let. And I wanted you to hear the story that I did about Michigan with the haunted house,
Hmm.
but unfortunately, you came in right at the end, and I was like, oh no, but
Yeah.
I wanted to
Uh,
surprise you with one from your home state.
I love it. I love it.
And so I guess we're gonna say a lovely good night to everybody, and thank you, Jason, for joining us.
Yeah,
And
thank you for having
Ja,
me back.
congratulations. Send your
Ja, good
Yeah,
evening.
Ja won. Yeah, I got the fact right.
Yeah.
Send your information to Psychic Fixes, um, uh,
at
in me-
Gmail.
at gmail.com, and you will get a lovely hell note as a gift for guessing correctly tonight.
That'd be great.
Sorry,
Just
sorry,
give
Brandy.
me an email.
Oh no, that's you. Actually, congrats to you. You're the first one to fool me.
Oh, great.
There we go. Okay, you guys, we're going to sign off. We'll see
All
you
right.
next week.
Good
Everybody,
evening,
have a
everyone.
great